Hey everyone, Thomas here, bringing you episode 2 of the MrWartburg show. In case you're just tuning in, I am MrWartburg. Now, the MrWartburg show, as I may have mentioned in episode 1, is kind of a haphazard, fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants type of show. Some weeks it'll be audio only, as I talk topics over with my buddies on Skype. Sometimes it'll be the camera, me, and my trusty microphone. It's going to be awesome. Last week we talked about Star Trek. Other topics could include favorite restaurants, fast food, comic books, superheroes, James Bond movies, you name it. I could talk about it, as long as I got a hankering to talk. Like today. This happened tonight, about an hour before I filmed this. Had to take my meds afterwards. But on the forum, the Oxford Comic Cafe, which is the best thread on Rooster Teeth, if I do say so myself, Darkfur and Jerron, us three were talking about our favorite cartoons. And that had spawned from an earlier conversation that Eric H. Vila had about how Ren and Stimpy looks like what could become X-Ray and Vav from Rooster Teeth. I totally fucked up Rooster Teeth. I don't know why I said it like that. Ugh, that was awful. So let's get right to my list, shall we? Talking about my top 10 personal cartoon favorites. These are my favorites. In the comments below, I'd like you guys to later, after you watch this video, post your own. So we'll start with mine. And again, they're in no particular order, except for the ones at the top, because those are, in fact, my favorite. The others are very, very close to the top, just not the top. Number 10, Digimon Digital Monsters. Now, in terms of characters when I was growing up, Ty was definitely at the top of the list of ones like, I like this guy. And Matt was right there, number 2. But Agumon, Greymon, Metal Greymon, War Greymon were like so freaking cool. And I loved watching that when I was a kid. I'd race off the bus. Wait, it wasn't an afternoon? That was a Saturday morning show. Some of the other ones on the list are afternoon shows, and I'd have to race off the bus to get in and turn on Fox Kids. But I'll get to those later. Now, Digimon was a far superior show to the other one that was on at the time in Pokemon. Never liked the show, loved the games in Pokemon, didn't like the show. Digimon never really had the games catch on like Pokemon did, but the show was far superior to where it's now actually getting a sequel. Like the original first generation is having a sequel. Now, the second gen Digimon was alright. It just wasn't the same. You know, the characters were the same, but the Digimon just weren't as cool. I mean, that original gen was just... And I feel the same about the Pokemon gen, too. Gen 1 in Pokemon, the red and blue and then yellow, was just far superior. The original 151 is the best. Don't let anybody tell you different. Moving up to number 9. This was a one-season run from the mind of Bruce Timm, who, if you know that name, you know he's made some great shows. And if you don't know it, look him up, because it's a travesty that you don't. This show was on the Cartoon Network. Green Lantern, the animated series. It had Green Lantern, can't talk again, voiced by Josh Keaton, I believe. And it was a great one season, kind of split up into 2, like, half seasons with, like, their own self-contained arcs. It was a great look at the Green Lantern mythos. You know, we got the Red Lanterns in the first half, and then you had the Manhunters in the second half, which are both very integral parts of the Green Lantern lore. Touched on the beginnings of the Yellow Lanterns. You see the Black Lanterns, the Blue Lanterns, or you can see the Black Lantern book, like the Book of Death or whatever it is from DC Universe. And then they also have the Blue Lanterns of Hope. Have a huge role down throughout both halves, and it's just a really great show. And Cartoon Network was rather dumb for canceling it. It was kind of doomed because the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds had came out about a year and a half before the show, and those toy sales bombed like horribly. And Cartoon Network decides to keep their shows based on the merchandise that it sells, which also doomed another show that's higher up on my list. And Green Lantern was even further screwed because of the poor sales of the movie that preceded it, so it kind of had a bad taste in people's mouths, despite the fact that the show was excellent. Had great voice cast and great storytelling. It's all on Netflix in the US. I don't know about the other countries for people who might be watching this, but definitely if you can, check it out. It is totally worth your time. Moving on to number 8. Yeah, we're on 8. 8. Darkwing Duck. That's right. Let's get dangerous. I loved this show. I was really, really young when it was on. I was like maybe 4 or 5. And I'm only 24, so some of the like really early 90s stuff I do kind of remember. Like I remember Bonkers and a few other shows like that, but not really deeply do I remember them. Darkwing Duck is like right on the fringe of that. I was just starting to know what TV was, and it was one of the first shows that I really latched onto. It's a great kind of parody, like DuckTales meets Batman, kind of. It was so good. And my parents bought me like the Darkwing Duck board game. I had the little magnifying glass and the squirt gun, and my grandma made me a purple cape so I could like play dress up. And actually, for homecoming, for superhero day, I went as Darkwing Duck. And if I can find the picture, I'm going to be overlaying it on top of this video now. If I can't, it means I couldn't find the picture. But it was a great show, and a really great theme song that stuck with me for a long time. And I already said the line from it. Moving up the list, again a Bruce Timm creation. You're going to be seeing one more after this from his mind, because he was such a great TV guy, specifically DC Comics guy. Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. I'm counting those as one entity because they feature the same main Justice League cast and was from the same creators and the network and everything, even though they were technically two different titles. Now, Justice League was a great continuation of Batman and Superman, the animated series, both of those. It was actually my first introduction to Nathan Fillion. He voices Vigilante on Justice League Unlimited, who's a character that is really underserved in the DC universe, and Fillion just brought an awesome voice to him. And then the original Justice League, I mean, what can you say? Kevin Conroy, Tim Daly, Michael Rosenbaum. It just doesn't get any better. It's awesome. And if you haven't watched Justice League, definitely, especially as we move into like Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice, it would be a great introduction to the DC universe because you really get a feel for who those characters are. In that show, they absolutely nail the characters of the heroes. Now, every now and then they have to make some different choices with the characters because it is a kid's show. But it's definitely a good introduction into the DC universe if you're wanting to get into it, because they do tackle some pretty heavy stuff. And like time travel, multiple universes, it's really deep for a kid's show, which is kind of a running theme in some of my other shows that I'm going to be talking about in a bit. Next on the list is a newer show. It's the third newest on my list, I think. Avatar: The Last Airbender from Nickelodeon. It's actually the only Nick show on my list. I didn't have Nickelodeon growing up, so none of those shows are going to be on here. I mean, I grew up with Fox, ABC, CBS, IPTV, Arthur for the win, and I'm missing one. NBC, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. And then the WB, of course, had its own network before it merged with like UPN and then the CW. So I didn't have the Nickelodeon shows, and I didn't get into Nick stuff until I got to college, when Avatar: The Last Airbender was on Netflix. And I really regret missing it when it was on the air. It's a phenomenal show, and I've rewatched it 3 times. It's on Amazon Prime right now, and I had the 30-day trial, and I watched all of that in Legend of Korra. Legend of Korra may have better visuals, but Avatar: The Last Airbender is just a more complete show. But Legend of Korra is way more mature in its storytelling. You can totally tell they've kind of evolved their storytelling, even though they do get a little more cliched in bad ways in Korra. Avatar is still cliche, but they tell it well. I mean, you can get away with cliches if it's well told and well executed. Sometimes they don't do the romance cliches so well in Legend of Korra, and it brings it down just below my top 10, even though it's visually the best show I've ever seen for a cartoon. Even better than number 1 on my list. Next is another one-season show that fell by the wayside because of the DC-Marvel merger, and that is Wolverine and the X-Men. Wolverine voiced by Steve Blum, or Blum, however you say his last name, in that, and it's probably the definitive voice of Wolverine. I know the 90s X-Men is fantastic Wolverine, but this is more kind of Hugh Jackman body Wolverine with married with a 90s voice because of the animation style, and it's perfect. Steve Blum just nails the character. And that whole cast, Emma Frost is great. The mystery of what happened to the telepaths, and you know where they're going. The finale in season 1, it's like, God dang it, Disney, why'd you have to cancel this? I know why they did, because of money reasons, and it was from the Marvel Studios, and they didn't want to, worry about who was going to own it and all that. So I get why they canceled it. I just wish they'd been back to it now. It's, again, all on Netflix, and it is totally worth your time. Such a great show. Especially now that we're going to get Age of Apocalypse in the movies. It would have been great if that show would have had a season 2. Number 4. Ooh, this takes it back. This was one of those shows that I rushed off the bus to get to. And that is Gargoyles. Now, I hope some other people out here have some memories of that show. One of my favorite tidbits of it is it actually had pretty much the whole cast of The Next Generation. And you had, I believe, the only person who wasn't in was Patrick Stewart, I think. Data shows up as Puck. Michael Dorn is in there as the main character's brother, nemesis turned friend again. Then you have Jonathan Frakes as one of the human bad guys. Marina Sirtis is the gargoyle bad woman. It's just a great cast. Kevin, what's his name? The Navy voice guy. And Arbiter. He's the voice of Goliath, like the gargoyle. And it's a great show. Now, the latter 2 seasons are totally break from canon. Like, they have a complete tone shift, and I don't even acknowledge them as existing. The creator is Greg Weisman. I think it's how you say his name. And he's the creator of the first thing on my list. And he's had a bad habit in TV of having a lot of his shows canceled before they could complete their run. Gargoyles was his. And he continues it in comic book form. And it's great. And he's always interacting with fans about trying to keep it alive. Spectacular Spider-Man was another character of his, a show of his that got canceled that was phenomenal, and it died before it was time. And I'll get to number 1 in a few minutes. 3 on my list, another show that I was like, off the bus, boom, get home. X-Men from the 90s. I mean, they told such great comic book stories. They adapted them so well out of the comics that even now it still holds up. Yeah, the dialogue's a little, 90s cartoony, but man, the stories they told, pure comic books, and I love it. Number 2, I don't know what more you can need to be say about this one, Batman the Animated Series. Just the perfect cartoon, pretty much. Not quite number 1 on my list, because it started in 92 when I was 2 years old, and I didn't really get into it until I was older. So it had I didn't experience it before it was old, you know what I mean? But its impact on cartoons is so important, I can't have it any lower than 2. And if anybody tells you it's less than number 2 on their list, they're lying to you or they don't know what they're talking about. It redefined one of Batman's iconic villains. It gave us Mr. Freeze. It created Harley Quinn. It told a new type of storytelling in cartoons that no one had really done before. It went deep. It's like, I don't care, it's a kid's show. We're going with the mental illness and all the genetic stuff with a few of the other characters, and they weren't afraid to tell great stories, regardless of the fact that it was just a kid's show. And I always respected it for that. And Bruce Timm is one of the greatest minds ever in cartoon, the genre of cartoons. Even just general storytelling in general. He's awesome. He can do no wrong in my eyes. But number 1 on my list, just because it is so perfect in its first season, even its second season is awesome too, Young Justice. This was a show that came on when I was in college. And it initially aired right after, I want to say it was Star Wars The Clone Wars, that show. It aired in the Friday primetime slot on Cartoon Network. It was meant to be an, older teen, adult, people who grew up on Justice League. This was the show they were going to watch, that they wanted to watch. And it totally was. It nailed it. You had Dick Grayson, who is the best Robin, hands down. You had an awesome pairing in Wally West and Artemis Croc. You had Superboy being awesome. I love that character. He's the best incarnation of Connell I've ever seen. Even the Smallville one, which is great. I had Aqualad, which was a really underserved character in the comics, to the mainstream, and just made him a badass. It was great. Had awesome storytelling. Wasn't afraid to just, there was fake deaths, multiple universes, time travel again. A lot of storytelling you don't see in, general kids fare. And, I think in season 2, there's a betrayal, and they blow up their home with a frickin' nuke, and the former leader stabs his old friend, and but he's undercover, so he's not. And then he gets mind wiped by their telepath, and they go into the ramifications of a person mind wiping someone. How does that the fallout to both the victim of it and the person who did it? That was really great. Now in the second season, it kind of got a little, I don't know. They did a 5-year time jump, and they brought in a lot of new characters who were awesome. But it basically became the Blue Beetle and Friends show, which sucked because the original core was still there, and we got to see Nightwing. Fucking Nightwing. It was great. And the animation, outside of Legend of Korra, I have never seen a more beautifully animated show. The whole thing was awesome. One scene in particular stands out if you watch the show. Season 2 is not on Netflix yet, and the moment is from Season 2, is when Impulse, Bart Allen, is vibrating and going through stuff in super slow motion. He's going through walls, and that animation just blew my mind when I saw it. And I saw it when I was 22. I've seen a lot of cartoons, and it totally stood out as, whoa, this moment was awesome. So Young Justice owns the top spot for me. It's but pretty much a tie with Batman the Animated Series on the storytelling aspect of it. So that's my top 10. In the comments below, Why don't you tell me what I missed or what you think should be on my list? Maybe give me your top 10. I'd like to read them and have a discussion. It'd be awesome. Because I love cartoons. Even though I'm 24, I love cartoons. So please do that below. Share the video, subscribe, like, follow me on Twitter and all that stuff. Check me out on Rooster Teeth. All the links will be below or on my YouTube channel. Working on a sign off, so for now, I'll just say see you later.